Welcome everyone to the top 8 here in Madison NRG Championship Series. Corbin Hostler joined by my co-host Devin Doomwake O'Donnell. We have watched 8 rounds of Swiss today. A lot of modern action. 177 players came here to compete in not just for prizes in this event, but of course for everything that comes after this event, which includes the NRG Championship, that $35,000 event we're building towards at the end of the year. One of these players is going to qualify directly if they can take down the top 8 that we will be bringing to you next. So I think we'll get a chance to take a look over our top 8 bracket. But I am excited. We have 4 Nadu players and 4 non-Nadu players. What are you hoping we see out of the next couple hours, Devin?
Well, we talked about this a little bit during the break, and I think that there is maybe a chance that we would have 4 non-Nadu decks. Because for those of you who are watching at home that maybe didn't see the top 8 bracket, which maybe we can get up on the screen real quick, there are 4 Nadu decks and 4 non-Nadu decks. And it turns out that the Nadu decks happen to be on separate sides of the bracket. So each Nadu deck is playing against a non-Nadu deck. So no Nadu mirrors, but we do have the potential to either have all Nadu or no Nadu. Now, I think it's most likely going to be a little bit of each. But the matchup that we are going to be starting with is going to be none other than BBD himself, former world champion. No scoffing at that. Taking on Blake Thompson on Dimir Murktide, who we did see this match a little bit earlier in the hands of Christian Valenti, and Valenti was able to take that down, and we'll have to see if that is going to repeat itself.
Yeah, and here we go. We are off and running. The top 8 in Madison begins. Blake Thompson on your right, Braun-Duin on your left with Bant Nadu, one of the best players in the room, playing the best deck in the room against another excellent player, playing a deck that we've seen do pretty well today. But I have to say, Murktide's always just kind of a deck where you're like, yeah, it exists. But it's looked great today.
Yeah,
This Dimir version is really a new. Sorry, go ahead. I think go ahead to take off on it, but I think this Dimir version of Murktide is a new twist that's been found a very nice home in the format.
Yeah, and we like I said, we saw Christian Valenti a couple of rounds prior. Actually, we saw him for the last 2 rounds on camera. And one thing that we've kind of noted is how good of a threat Psychic Frog is, where it is a card that when you are trading 1 for 1, which these blue-black decks are very good at doing with counter spells and fatal pushes, every time you're trading 1 for 1 and making that exchange and then attacking with the frog, you're getting that card back. So you're always up in a card in the exchange. And then one other thing that I really found quite fascinating when we saw Christian Valenti prior was the synergy between Psychic Frog and Murktide Regent, where you get into these spots where maybe you cast a Murktide Regent with a smaller graveyard, and then later in the game, you can dump a bunch of spells, exile those to Psychic Frog, those get counters from discarding to the frog, and they pump the Murktide. So it kind of like gives you this Splinter Twin-esque type kill, where you can just kind of kill people out of nowhere.
That's true, and we've seen it several times play out in a similar way today, which is, a combo-esque finish you don't really expect. All right, here we go. What is that a frog? We've got a fancy art frog. I'm not sure where you get that one, but that is what we've got from Blake Thompson there, namesake of a lot of these decks. They just call it frog decks, right? On turn 2, BBD's Wall of Roots ran into the spell snare that has been making a big comeback in Modern. And that is the state of things. It doesn't look like they're beating turn 3 kills on the table this time.
Yeah, BBD's hand pretty slow. Nothing on turn 1. The Wall of Roots got spell snared on turn 2, and maybe trying to follow up with something like a Nadu. But if Nadu hits the battlefield, maybe Blake can just have a copy of Fatal Push or some other sort of removal spell. But Teferi is actually quite good here for BBD. If that does resolve, which it looks like it is, that's not only going to bounce the frog, which is going to set Blake back quite a bit, not able to attack next turn, get that card back, not able to kill the Teferi and start pressuring, but it's also going to mean that now Blake cannot interact with BBD on BBD's turn. So,
Mhm.
maybe BBD has something like land 4, Shuko plus Nadu. That could spell disaster, but Bowmaster is going to clean up that Teferi pretty nicely.
Yeah, this is looking pretty clinical from Murktide, just like it looked earlier when we saw this matchup play out.
Yeah, turn
Needs to
one,
Good. Yeah.
spell snare your thing. Turn two, play the Psychic Frog, and then have the ability to go Bowmaster plus hold up interaction. It looks like was holding up Spell Pierce. Now, Spell Pierce not gonna be
Not
good
here.
enough against Nadu,
No.
but could have potentially Spell Pierce to Shuko.
Yeah, certainly worthwhile to hold up. Remember, it's game one, so no sideboards in play yet, although players have seen each other's lists. So BBD aware that, of course, one mana could mean Spell Pierce. It could mean maybe a couple other things, but it could certainly mean Spell Pierce. And whether you played around it or not, it doesn't work here. Nadu and Halfling hit the battlefield, but nothing for BBD to trigger anything quite yet. I didn't see what was in his hand because a Cord calling here would enable him to go get his encore and start the combo. So the danger zone is there. Blake with a lot of cards he's staring at.
Yeah, Blake had a lot of lands in hand, though. Well, I guess there's only two. It looks like two
Thinking to
lands.
stupor. Yeah.
Yeah, two lands, Sink into Stupor, Psychic Frog, Spell Pierce. Uh, Funny enough, been to
But
Bowmaster and then drew a Bowmaster anyways. So
try bug.
I know you didn't want that Bowmaster, but what about the second one, Blake? Can I interest you in another one? But yeah, Blake doesn't really have a ton of good options here. I guess can hold up Sink into Stupor if BBD goes for some sort of combo, but I don't know. You can like Sink into Stupor the Nadu that's going to get a trigger. I guess you probably have to just go maybe like untap land, Psychic Frog, hold up Bowmaster, and maybe hope that's good enough. But kind of a rough spot here for Blake. After that, you can imagine if BBD didn't have the Teferi to bounce that Psychic Frog, this game
That's
looks a
right.
lot different. Where
Mhm.
Blake connects with the frog maybe once or twice and is able to have a little bit more pressure. But that Teferi was a really backbreaking turn.
When you think about the game we actually watched earlier, where we watched Christian Valenti, I believe was right, counter Teferi, and then someone else subtlety their Teferi, their own Teferi to get it back because they viewed it as that
Mm-hmm.
important. And we see how good it was here when it did go ahead and land. And here we go, BBD. Look like we're opting to go for a bestow onto the halfling, which will run into the Sink into Stupor that Thompson was holding up. It was, of course, telegraphed, so I'm sure BBD's not surprised here. He knew he had Frog and he didn't play it, but it does run into Sink into Stupor.
Yeah,
That's
this
just
is
going to put it back in
interesting.
our hand, though. It's not ideal.
Yeah, it's also interesting that so the Sink into Stupor can bounce the Delighted Halfling, but that not only is going to give a Nadu trigger for BBD,
Right.
it also means the Spring Heart is going to resolve. Um, oh, we
And
get
there's
two, right? Because we
two
get one from the
because
Nintuko, one from the
the
Sink. Yep.
bestow. Right. Yeah, really, honestly, kind of brutal as these Nadu triggers are. And here we are, BBD with Court of Calling in hand. Uh, is I don't think even with a land would be able to go get an encore this turn.
I
Although with
think a
a
fetch
wall
land.
of roots,
I think a
yeah,
fetch land would
fetch
allow you to
land.
do it,
Yeah, you
right?
might be right.
Because fetch land would give you 2 tokens. You'd have 3 lands
Maybe just an
plus
untapped
two
land might do it,
tokens.
right? He's got a shot
Yeah,
here.
any untap land. Yeah, untap land would give you 3 mana, token, Nantuko,
Yeah,
Nadu, and then you could go 6, cord for 3, get the I forget the name of that card. What is it? Outrider and Core. But we know that's actually not good because Blake does have that copy of Spell Pierce.
that's true. And while BBD may be aware of it from earlier, or at least aware of the possibility of it, it doesn't mean it's not still going to work. So here we go. He actually just opts to play out all of his creatures and has a Court of Calling that's revealed and 2 cards that are not revealed. That's why you see him with that face up. Blake Thompson knows about it. So BBD playing where he can see it, although I'm sure he still wrote it down. But that's what you're seeing there. Blake, meanwhile, on the other hand, is going to go ahead and fetch here. He's got that Spell Pierce open, and he's got to figure out what he's doing. So everything's tapped. It looks like BBD is casting the
Yeah,
board
it looks
here.
like I think BBD
Yeah,
announced the cord, and Blake is responding with a fetch land. So yeah,
here
that
we
spell
go.
pierce
The
going
spell
to take care
pierce
of
is
the
going to eat
cord.
it.
And that means BBD is going to be left passing. But, BBD is kind of okay with these exchanges because he's not really under a lot of pressure. There's two 1/1s over there. BBD's at 16, can take a few damage from there. And the leftovers in Blake's hand, not particularly great. There's Fatal Push, Bowmaster, Frog, and I believe a fetch land or Surveil land, not even a
Surveil
fetch land. So
land.
you can't even
Yeah.
get, not being able to get Revolt for Fatal Push is kind of tough.
You can see why we saw Toxic Deluge in the sideboard earlier too, right? Because
Yep.
imagine having a Deluge in this spot. You completely clean it up and be in a good spot. As it is now, that Frog was all the difference, right? Like the Frog fueling all of this game would look entirely different. Instead, Blake's got limited resources to try to deal with here. Not a lot of pressure. BBD's got plenty of life and is obviously has Nadu sitting in play, and it just takes anything to go off from there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a desperate line where you could go Bowmaster your own Bowmaster to get Revolt and then push the Nadu, but I mean, that's a really tough line.
I've heard worse lines, I'll say that, in this situation,
Yeah,
right? That said, Blake, he's got that surveil land, surveils an island to the graveyard, plays the frog, just passes the turn back, I would
I
assume
feel
here with push and Bowmaster up.
I feel like maybe at that point you could potentially just fatal push or I guess no, yeah, not fatal push, but you could Orcish Bowmaster the Springheart Nantuko, and actually pretty heads up here for Blake, going to wait until BBD's turn because
Yeah.
that if the Nantuko it gives you basically one less trigger if the Nantuko stays in play somehow. So, but that is going to find a land, and that land's going to generate another token from the Nantuko. So yeah, he is able to get rid of the Nantuko, presumably. Not exactly sure what BBD's leftovers are.
Yeah, this game's an interesting spot if BB doesn't have an easy way to get Nadu rolling here. I see a
Ooh,
I see a at least one bestow trigger in hand.
yeah, another Nantuko, and I
Bristly Bill.
believe Bill I think was the top deck here, so you can actually go Bill first. Yeah, Bill with the halfling, and then you
So
can
go ahead
go
for people who may, if you don't mind, Devin. How does
sure.
Bill interact here?
So Bristly Bill is kind of sort of like another Shuko in a weird way. So basically, if you have Bristly Bill plus Springhard Nantuko, every time you hit a land, you're generating a 1/1 token off of Nantuko, but you're also generating a trigger off of Bill. Bill
Mhm.
says put a counter on target creature. That target creature will get triggered by Nadu. So basically, it gives you kind of this way to keep going where you
Right.
hit a land makes a 1/1, gives you a counter, that triggers Nanu, keeps going, gives you, and then basically until you hit a non land. But presumably, a non land is maybe another way to keep going, and so on
Right.
and so forth. So it acts as a Shuko in a weird way, and well, that Court of Calling is going to act like a I keep forgetting the name of the card, Outrider and Core. That's what it's
Yeah.
going to be.
Yeah. Everything tapped. BBD knew he had it. He shows the Court of Calling. Blake Thompson looks sadly at the fatal push in his hand that won't save him. Nadu is Naduing on the left side of your screen. And you know what? It's doing so in the hands of a world champion. Who better than Brian Braun-Duin to show off in what could be the last weekend of the Nadu deck, show off what it's capable of. Because this was a
Exactly.
really tight game played by BBD against the Dimir Murktide deck that has, we've seen, dismantled Nadu in times in the past. He played this game really nicely to navigate himself.
Yeah, I mean, if we go back to the third turn of the game, right, where BBD had the Teferi, and I believe, maybe had some other options to play. Could have maybe played a Nadu that turn, could have maybe played, Springheart and Tuco, excuse me, or something like that. And yeah, was just able to kind of sequence this perfectly. And you can imagine if that Psychic Frog were able to stay in play for a couple of turns, this game looks a lot different, where maybe
Yeah.
Blake is connecting with the Psychic Frog and getting extra cards and dealing BBD damage, but just really wasn't able to recover from that Teferi bounce. And that was essentially the decider of the entire game.
And
Going
this,
through the
yeah,
motions.
this, friends, is maybe one of the last times you get to watch this happen on camera. Somebody
Mm,
comboing off with Nadu is that's what BBD does and just works his way through it. So,
we've
all
got two
right,
more rounds.
assuming Nadu, nothing wild happens here, and Nadu finishes this one off, they'll be up a game. If you are joining us here recently, we are in the top 8 here in Madison. We have 4 Nadu players playing against 4 non-Nadu players in the top 8, giving us the possibility for an all Nadu top 4 or a no Nadu top 4. Either way, it's a compelling storyline, and that's what we're watching. So we thank you for joining us. Look at Blake in head start on the sideboarding here.
Looking up the sideboard notes, you love to see it.
That's efficient
Just want
use
to
of
make
your
sure.
time right there, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, you could even maybe go up to the judge and say, "Hey, can I just look at the deck list while BBD is comboing just to get a better idea?" I'm sure the judge would allow it.
Yeah, chat requested standings. I'm not sure if we're able to pull those up. If we can, we'd love to look at them with you. Because remember, players who are playing in this event, like not everybody top eights, obviously, but just because you top eight doesn't mean you don't have a good tournament. And if you have a good
Mhm.
tournament, you can earn points for the end of the year championship that everyone is trying to qualify for, that $35,000 event that NRG puts on. The winner of this event going to have an automatic berth there. Everyone else who top eights this event, these players you're looking at here, are going to have a line on accumulating points. More points, of course, the better you do. That's what you're trying to get. And the ultimate winner of the championship at the end of the year gets every grinder's dream free entry into all events for the entirety of next year. An incredible prize for an incredible winner at the end of the tournament circuit. One of these players could be them. BBD in the middle of comboing off here with Nadu.
Yeah, and one thing we can't forget about the showdowns is the custom token. If you
That's
if you
right.
win one of these showdowns, you get a token with your likeness on it, and I'm sure that that would be a huge achievement for both of these players. And we're just trying to find some stuff to talk about while we go through the motions. Maybe BBD will eventually explain the combo. But yeah, game two, we could look at sideboards. Let me. All right, I'm gonna pull up Blake's sideboard real quick here. It's very similar to what Christian was working with, Christian Valenti. 3
Mhm.
Consigned to Memory, 3 Break the Ice, 2 Surgical Extraction, 2 Deluge, 2 Stern Scolding, a Narset, a Spellbomb, and a Shadow's Verdict. Yeah, there's some stuff to work with. I mean, Toxic Deluge, definitely want to go towards that. We did talk about earlier whether or not Christian would maybe bring in the surgicals to either Fatal Push or Thoughtseize and Nadu and then surgical it. I don't think that's where you want to be, but yeah, the Deluges are at least a slam dunk.
Yeah, the surgicals are what we keep going back to, right? It's just like
Yeah.
because the Nadu deck is so good, it makes you want to take these lines that maybe are not as consistent statistically. Like, oh, well, maybe I can get a Nadu into the graveyard and then I'll surgical their Nadu, and then they won't be able to do anything. And that doesn't work as often as you want it to. But hey, it does work sometimes, and that's how it can feel when you're playing against a deck that does, as you see what BBD is doing. You want to chase some of those more aggressive lines and possibilities in the sideboarding. As you can see, BBD on the left is the number 3 seed, so was of course was on the play in this game 1. Blake will get to take the play back in game 2, have full access to his sideboard. We know he's got a plan for it because we saw the notes. But all right, I've got something queued up for just this moment, Devin.
Okay. What do you got? What do you got for me, Corbin?
You see that windswept heath Brian Braun-Duin has
Yes,
there?
I do see that
Are
windswept teeth.
are you familiar with the story on the art of this swept heath?
No, tell me more.
There's a deep I don't I wouldn't want to use the word conspiracy because it's true
Oh, okay.
that the art for Windswept Heath, the original art, was
Hmm.
swapped last minute with a different card. I believe it is a basic forest or maybe a basic plains of one of the tribes or one of the groups in the story, right? Because
Hmm.
it is a picture of their homes and the art style is the same. And like 4 of the lands are done by one artist and 1 is done by another artist. So
That is kind of
someone did
strange.
the
Yeah.
work and they went back and they looked at all of the arts going back, all of this, and the arts from all of the set going back 20 years, putting this together. And when you see it in summation, you're like, yeah, that's what happened. And it's just this fun little fact about Magic lore that we now get to see on our camera 20 years later, because that art for the original Windswept Heath, of course, has become so iconic as one of the original fetch lands that we've all been watching on camera for 20 years.
Do
The
you
more you
know
know.
by any chance, is it one of the basic lands from Onslaught or is it from a different set?
No, it's from Onslaught.
Okay.
I wish I had pulled it up entirely in front of me. I could tell you the exact one, but no, that is the story
Well,
there,
you
and
know,
it's fascinating.
we got some time, Corbett. If production wants to pull up each individual basic forest and plains from Onslaught, we can go through them and figure out which one it is. I mean, we got time, you
We
know.
do have time, it seems. Nope.
Uh, Production is saying
Production
they can't do
says,
it.
nope, we will not be
All
going
right.
through basic land art in our time. That is not how we will be spending this. Let's watch Braun-Duin combo off. All right, I'll say this. People very rarely ever get to see the end state of this combo, and they may never get to see it again. What, Devin, in a nutshell, is the actual loop that is going to be presented at the end of this?
I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't exactly know how it works.
That's reasonable.
I know it involves like getting your library to know cards
Hmm.
and like besieging your opponent, and you can also sacrifice Haywire, a copy Haywire Might, and gain infinite life. Basically, it's besiege all of your stuff, Odawara all of your stuff, gain infinite life, and then pass. I think it's something along those lines. That's like the official end state after you've demonstrated the full loop, as it were.
Yeah. Well, there we go. It involves that, and Blake is going to learn all about how it works right here as he watches it play out. For those who don't know, by the way, we keep referencing Braun-Duin, world champion, all of this. BBD is somebody that I think many Magic players watching this stream should know about and honestly aspire to his career. Right? He started at sort of the ground level that we all start at, playing
Yep.
at your store, going to slightly larger tournaments, 1Ks, 2Ks, trying to get better. And he just kept grinding at it, just kept improving a little at a time, shared his entire results and journey over years online in content that people followed across, of course, a variety of platforms. And what was amazing about his story is he just took one little level up at a time. The idea if you just get a little better every day, you'll eventually get somewhere. That's what he did. He just started winning smaller tournaments and then slowly grinding results and never being the guy who just breaks through and wins it all and everyone's like that's the best
Mhm.
Magic player in the world. He was never that. He was just a guy who always worked really hard and improved. And then he won the world championship because he worked so hard and improved for so long, and he took those steps all the way up to the very very top of the game.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but the year he qualified for Worlds, wasn't it just from GPs? It was like he was the top GP point leader, I think, or something like that.
I don't
When they
recall
used to do
offhand for
it.
that particular year, but yeah, back then we had the way it would work is we had kind of different masters, is what we call it. So the player who had the
Yep.
best limited record at the Pro Tour would get a world invite, and
Yes.
the player with the
Yep.
best constructed record at the Pro Tour over the course of the year would get an invite, and the player who had the best GP finishes within the system would get an invite, and all of these things to fill the seats of a very, of a small, like select 24 person field world championship. And yeah, that is one of the years that BBD qualified. It beat Marcio Carvalho, I believe, in the finals. It lasted an extremely long time. You think this is taking a long time.
Oh,
That
that
was
was
a
Bant
Bant
Company,
Company
right?
mirror and standard,
Yep.
and I sat there at that table with them for hours, and every one of us had to
Oh
use the
man.
bathroom. Just the players, but no one wanted to stop the game. But I'll tell you, it was a slog. But it was I mean, hey, that was a world championship. BBD won it. Um, really kind of capped his incredible story.
Now that you mention it, that I feel like the Bant Company mirror was kind of fun back in the day. It was a lot. Like the games took forever because both decks were just playing a ton to the battlefields, but
Mhm.
there was some nuance to it, like when to Reflector Mage and things like that. That
It
was
was
kind
a
of a fun
lot
mirror.
of that, and then it became a lot of I don't remember the card Tragic Arrogance.
Yep, I remember that.
Tragic Arrogance became the real breaker there in those mirrors. You'd both build up. One player would try to get ahead. If they couldn't, the board would just get bogged down until someone played Tragic Arrogance. I have to just add one more note. We've been shouting
Yes,
out our
thank you,
production.
coverage.
Yeah, well, been shouting out our production crew all day, as we rightly should. Look at how on it they are with the tokens. Do you think they thought they would need this many insight tokens?
No, well, I mean, they probably went to, they probably opened hundreds and hundreds of cases to get these tokens. I don't actually know what happened. I'm just,
I
making
think it's
making something up.
probably
But
one of the hardest things to collect in Magic. A game where people love the collectability and all of these things. One of the hardest things to collect is probably like a complete token collection of all the tokens in Standard. And I know because we
tokens,
used to have to keep them for all the Grand Prix.
yeah, tokens. Some of those are hard to find too. Like when I was buying tokens for Boros Energy, like finding the specific 2/1 cat token. That one, I mean, I think there's a couple of other 2/1 cat tokens that have been printed, but it was kind of hard to find those because a lot of the people who were playing Boros have, they need a bunch of copies for their decks, so they're
Yeah.
not that easy to find. Remember the reflection token? And it got to a point where people were wondering whether or not the reflection token was going to cost more than Fable the Mirror Breaker itself.
Yes, I do. Funny, I was actually looking up some tokens for a deck the other day. The Dragon Broodmother token from Alara Reborn is worth more
Okay.
than Dragon Broodmother itself.
It's
The
really.
tokens are important, man. The Godsire token used to be worth a ton. Hey, pull your tokens out of your bulk, I guess. You can help fund your modern deck and come to an NRG event where you might get to watch Brian Braun-Duin combo off with Bant Nadu. We saw BBD back in round 2. We actually got to interview him after he won his match, and he said his secret plan all along was actually to avoid coverage. He didn't want the bad luck. He said, "I'm worried about messing it up. I'm afraid I'm going to misplay it." And I said, "Well, we'll avoid you for as long as we can." And that embargo was up for the top 8. And now he gets the opportunity to practice it because this is about as deep into it as you can get.
I love Blake throughout all this is just saying, he's just chilling. He's just having a good time, hanging out.
If we're talking, we actually referenced Stanislav Sivka winning a pro tour with eggs back in the
Yep.
day. And if you don't know what eggs means, essentially it's a combo deck that does this. It's a combo deck that where its combo turn is categorized by about 1,000 different small game actions. And that is the status of what's happening right now, right? Every one of these game actions matters because it's not a loop, although it appears that BBD is probably trying to explain the loop right now. It will eventually have a loop, but this is what got the eggs deck banned after it won a pro tour. It's that, how you think about tournament logistics, you get to the end and you go,
Yep.
okay, everyone, you have 5 turns, then we have a winner or a draw or whatever, and we're on to the next round because at some point the hall will close down, they will lock the doors, and we will have to leave.
They're
The
not gonna,
problem
they're
with
gonna kick us
that,
out.
yes, I've been there past the times I've still needed to work when they've locked the doors and kicked us out. The problem with that entire paradigm is, well, what if my one turn were to take 30 minutes?
Yeah.
And I'll win on
5
that
turns,
turn. Yeah, but it'll take
What
30 minutes. It just completely breaks the actual logistics that, govern Magic tournaments. And that is, you can see, maybe not the exact same thing, but very similar. The problem we are encountering with the Bant Nadu deck, which is deep in the infinite loop now, but is, still going on. Hopefully, the judges can maybe explain at some point what happens, but BBD will get there. The end result will be a victory, and we will be on to a sideboard game and a game 2 as soon as we can. I don't know if
similar
we're able to get any updates from the other matches, perhaps any
we can do
game
that too,
updates
yeah.
to see what's going on. Just to check in, reminder: we came into this top 8. We have 4 Nadu decks versus 4 non-Nadu decks, with the possibility for an all Nadu top 4 or a non Nadu top 4 based on the results. So we want to check in, of course, on those other games when we get a chance here.
Yeah, like you were mentioning, you brought up the kind of the eggs example, and it
Mhm.
maybe this isn't as good of an example, but similar to KCI, where KCI had some of that, like, go through my whole deck and do these like weird rules loops with like chromatic star and chromatic sphere sacrificing to pay for the mana cost, and they like created this weird rules loop that sometimes I remember, like, I think there were some judges that didn't even know how it was supposed to work in
Yeah.
the end. And
Yeah.
yeah, some similar stuff to that. But yeah, the tournament logistic aspect, like you mentioned, just it's the physical aspect of having to go through all this stuff. Just it makes tournaments take quite a while.
All right, I've got some more information here, though. This is
All right,
on
what
an
do you got?
important update. The
What do we got?
card that Windswept Heath, the art was switched on, Daru
Mhm.
Encampment.
Oh, so it wasn't a basic. Okay,
Yeah, sorry, I got that a
I
little bit
see.
of memory hole here.
Well, then it's still from Onslaught.
Rob Alexander illustrated 4 of the 5 original fetch lands in Onslaught and 1 basic planes. What if that art was originally for Windswept Heath? Okay, so it is the basic planes art. The Daru Encampment is showing that many of these cards look similar. The point is,
Oh,
you
I
can
see.
go look at this and you can find this, and it's a real thing. But as you can see, BBD is favoring the old school Windswept Heath art because it is just iconic.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah, those old school fetch land arts. It doesn't. You can't get any better than that. That original set of fetch lands. I mean, I can't appreciate that they printed the Zendikar fetch lands in retro. I think it was MH2 when they did that.
Mhm.
And those look pretty good. I think those are kind of nice.
Yeah,
I'm a
we were
big
talking
retro
earlier
guy though.
that yeah, the retro ones are great. We were talking earlier as well about the Galaxy lands at Infinity are very cool.
I mean, as far as basics is concerned, you're probably a fan of both of these. They both got Zendikar basics.
It's true. Well, look, the Bull Island, right? That Blake is rocking there is kind of
Oh, it's so
the
good.
classic.
Yeah.
Back when if you weren't playing back then when original Zendikar came out, the only okay, we're Blake's stepping off camera, so we may be hopefully reaching a conclusion here, where we find out that the deck is going to present an infinite loop and will win. Um, the Zendikar came out, and at that point, the only full art lands you can get came out of the unsets, right? So it was a big deal to have your unhinged lands, your unglued lands, and that was it. After that, it was just you had your draft basics, and then Zendikar came out, and all of a sudden, everybody could have them, and everyone the
Yeah.
Bowl Island was really a favorite of many people.
Were you playing way back in the day when they first came out with the unglued ones? Because that was like
No,
that was kind of the beginning where that yeah, I wasn't playing around that time. I started a little bit after that. But that was the very, very first, like, oh my goodness, we can actually do like real lands like this. And I remember
yeah,
when I started playing, there was still a lot of buzz around those because people had just never really seen them before.
hmm
And now it feels like the full art lands, we get at least 2 or 3 different ones in every single set, which is, I can appreciate that. They do look nice.
yeah. And you can talk about how on the one hand, well, if you get them in every set, it's not as special. On the other hand, almost every set that comes out, I look at the full art lands, or more specifically, maybe I see the artwork for them online. And I say, that's just it's just amazing. That's just beautiful, right? I got a
Yep.
bunch of decks, and I get to choose which basic land theme I want in those decks, right? And that is sort of the benefit of having so many beautiful and distinct ones, and really very unique land arts that they do in the age of secret layers that we live in. All right, we've got Blake back at the table. Brian Braun-Duin has revealed the Otawara, and I believe we are going to be working our way through things now.
I wonder so there's a whole bunch of dice towards the bottom. It's counting up to 28. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but it's hard to keep track of sometimes. There's a lot going on right now.
Well, there's a lot going on, and there's a lot on the line for these players because remember, the winner of this event, not only do they get, of course, a large check, they get a qualification. They get a qualification uh, for events that are not just this one, including the NRG Championship at the end of the year. They get all of the points for that as well. There's a lot going on here. We have 2 days of events here in Madison. We had a sealed event in addition to this modern event today, and tomorrow is we will be back, both Doom and I and our buddy Will Hall, tomorrow for Team Trios will be on tap. That's standard,
That's going to be
modern,
fun.
and legacy. A little bit of legacy. We can see some more Psychic Frog take off, I think, in legacy tomorrow. It is nothing beats team formats, team events, and it is always incredible to watch legacy on played on.
Oh yeah, I'm very very excited for tomorrow. There's going to be like I said, there's nothing the camaraderie about team events and just getting to play with your friends, and also just getting to see some different formats. We saw a lot of modern today. We're going to be able to see some standard and some legacy. Legacy is a format. I don't know how much legacy you've partaken in over the past couple of months or so, but legacy is a hotly contested and debated on format where we have a bit of a bird problem in modern, but they might have a bit of an elemental problem in legacy, and there's kind of been some discussions about grief for quite some time now.
Yeah, as of course it's been discussed, there is a banner restricted announcement coming soon, and that kind of provides context to a lot of what you're going to see. But the thing is, we saw a lot of Nadu decks today lose. We saw a lot of Nadu decks win, clearly, but we also saw a lot of players uh, find success who weren't on Nadu, which gives me a lot of things to be excited about when we aren't watching what we're watching right now. But in the meantime, those tokens down, those dice down there, by the way, those are representing tokens, I believe. We did officially hit the
Get a lot
limits
of tokens.
of all the insect tokens that were in fact printed.
We've reached the token limit on Magic Online. We are now using dice.
Right.
We can no
Yeah.
longer get tokens in play.
You might not know it. They only print so many insect tokens per set, and we've hit them all.
I wonder what the token limit is on Magic Online. I'm sure somebody in chat might know.
I broke it once playing mono red token storm.
Did you?
This was maybe 7 or 8 years ago, long before we had any good cards for the deck. But you could play Battle Hymn and make a lot of mana off your tokens and just kind of keep going that way. And eventually, Young Pyromancer would make enough tokens. You could burn at the stake people for lethal. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, once you started storming, it would break. It would break. I've broken Magic Online once or twice.
It was the ritual that gave you a mana for each creature, right?
Yeah, Battle Hymn.
Yeah.
It was it's so good.
That card's cool.
And of course, it triggers your Young Pyromancer before it resolves. So you get you could do a lot of fun stuff. Imagine it with
Ruby Medallion.
Medallion now, yeah, it'd be truly insane. But
Yeah,
it turns out Mono Red Storm was in fact a deck they tried, and it turns out it wasn't any good. Should they try Burn at the Stake? Would that fix the deck's problems? I'm just saying.
I mean, I've been playing some Storm recently. I think that Storm's okay. I mean, if your opponent doesn't draw their sideboard cards, it's a lot better. But it can be a little tough if they.
I was a little. I'll be honest. Going into the Pro Tour, I obviously we knew Nadu was going to be an issue. I don't want to say more concerned. I was also concerned about Storm because the idea, at least, is that if Storm is too good or whatever, you basically can't interact with it, right? They just play it and then you die, right? The idea was, well, if Nadu's too good, maybe people can at least interact with it because it's a creature. As it turns out, Nadu was just way too strong, and Storm is way too weak to hate cards. But sort of historically, it had the hallmarks of being concerning. A Storm deck breaking a new combo Storm deck breaking out off of a colorless card that enables a mana discount. That is a recipe for breaking Magic.
Corbin, we're running out of things to talk about.
Well, we might just have to get a little more esoteric. Like, for instance, I'm not sure I used the word esoteric correctly, but I think I did.
I mean,
that's
fine.
where we're headed here. Yeah.
I'll take your word for it.
Well, everyone always look. I don't know that anyone has actually recorded the Nadu deck going through the full combo. But we are. Look, I'm not going to complain if we're able to get off of this and get on to another game. But you know what? This is what is happening in the tournament. We are covering the tournament. The tournament is not going to progress until this match is over.
That is true. That is a good point.
Folks. We are along for the ride.
We must determine a winner. That is a requirement of the match. A winner must be determined. I'm trying to figure out like what we're missing, because like it gets to a certain point where you've deterministically presented a loop. And I wonder
Yeah.
if maybe it's a situation where BBD has not been asked to do the combo fully. And is it maybe possible he's having some trouble setting up the actual deterministic loop? And maybe that's what Blake is playing for, hoping that BBD has to pass the turn and then maybe Blake can rip a toxic deluge. I'm not sure.
This is why you play Thassa's Oracle.
Right, yeah. I know it's not technically correct, but boy does it save a lot of time.
I mean, you say this, like, imagine you just do this to your opponent in the Swiss, though, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, I guess in the Swiss, if you were asked to play it out, you could just do this. You know what I mean? Like you could just basically win the match 1-0 at that point, right?
yeah. If you're in that circumstance, yes, you're right. We'll keep going.
Yeah. Some lands, some counters on endurance. I don't know if those are counters on endurance or if those are copies of endurance. Okay, we got some updates in the back. Actually, all three of our matches are already done. Okay. Good news, bad news. So Dylan Ham, who
And then
was
bad news
our
again.
yeah, good news, bad news, bad news. Dylan Ham, who was on Gorios, has fallen to Wesley Hickman, who was on Nadu. That's going to be 2-1. Wesley advancing on Nadu. Garrick Alford on Jeskai Control has defeated Grayson Nemitz on Nadu 2-0. And Nathaniel Perigo on Nadu has defeated Ted on Boros Energy 2-0. So that is Garrick, our savior, on Jeskai, and then Wesley and Nathaniel both on Nadu. There's at least one left, though, Corbin. There's at least one left.
That's and hey, that deck is cool, right? So it'll be fun to watch play out when we get there. And you know what? We are going to get there. I have confidence that we will arrive. I guess you know what? Everyone's along for the ride now. Those other matches you're going to be watching. All your intel is going to be given away. That's for sure.
Oh boy.
Let's talk about standard for a minute though, Devin. How about that? Have
Oh,
you
I would love to.
yeah, what have you been playing in standard?
I, to be honest with you, Corbin, have been playing kind of everything. I have been focusing a lot of my energy towards standard. Not necessarily because there are specific tournaments coming up that I plan on playing, but just because it's a lot of fun. And I genuinely do am having a ton of fun playing the format.
Yeah.
I've been liking lizards. I've been trying a bunch of the different sort of caretakers talents decks, which that card is kind of taking over. It feels like we
That's
might
the
have another
yeah.
Fable the Mirror Breaker situation on our hands.
I don't know if we can pull that one up on screen, but it's exactly like Fable in that it also, I mean, not for as long, slipped past everybody, but no one was talking about that card for what, like a couple of weeks, it felt like.
Yeah.
At least a week or so after rotation came out. It really did sneak up on people. But yeah, explain to people what that card is doing, man, because it is a Splinter Twin situation.
Yeah, it's weird because it looks like it's kind of an innocuous card where you play the caretaker's talent. You have to, like, if you play it on turn 3, it's not going to do anything immediately the turn that you play it.
Mhm.
And you have to invest maybe a little bit more mana next turn to get the first level off of it. But it's just so good with cards that generate tokens for like quote unquote free, specifically Urbrask's Forge, where
Mhm.
you get into this, you have this engine where if you have Forge and talent, you don't have to spend mana on you don't have to spend extra mana on the talent to draw cards at like an additional card every single turn. And on top of all of that, talent lets you make a copy of the Forge token that you can then keep and play. And then the other thing that I didn't realize about talent was how quickly it actually killed people. A lot of these Boros
Yeah.
decks are playing like they have Mirex, they have Fountain Port, and they have Carrot Cake to make a bunch of random 1/1s. And sometimes you just go, turn 5, Here's 1 mana to copy a token, and then 4 mana to flip talent, and you have 5/3/3s attacking, and they're just dead that turn. So it's both the combination of a ton of card advantage, but also is able to close the game quickly against those control decks. Love that card.
Yeah, it is been making waves. And of course, Vraska being the other, right? When we talk about the Vraska combo that's been in standard,
Yep.
that's the other
The other
thing that
Splinter
is
Twin.
around. Yep. So it's there's a lot going on in standard, that's for sure. The domain decks have kind of even still stuck around. I guess you give
Yep.
people a way to cast Atraxa, they're going to try to figure out how to do it.
You know, one interaction that I've been trying somewhat recently that I've been kind of falling in love with is Iridescent Vinelasher and Freestrider Lookout, where Vinelasher is the offspring landfall that deals the target opponent
Oh,
takes the
yeah.
damage, and then
Uh-huh.
Lookout is whenever you commit a crime, you look at the top X, or I think it's top
It's
4 or
5.
top
Yeah.
5. Yeah, look at top 5, put a land into play. So basically, if you have, like, say you go Vinelasher on turn 3 with the offspring, and then turn 4, you play the Lookout and then play your land, you deal them 2 damage, you get a trigger off of the Lookout, which then finds a land to deal them 2 more damage. So it just kind of like is this engine, and there's a good amount of value lands in standard. You have Mirex, Restless
Yeah.
Cottage, Fountain Port. On top of, you also have Fable Passage. So you can actually Fable Passage to trigger the Vinelasher Lookout on your turn, and then crack
Mhm.
the passage on their turn to get an additional trigger out of it. So that's been kind of like a cool synergy I've been liking.
Yeah, I like that. I feel like Outlaws, of course, has obviously a ton of good playable cards, but uh, it's had a lot of sneaky kind of cards with like there's the 4/2 that people were even talking about in Rhinos, or the card that drew
Oh,
if you had
the
fours.
Lookout. Yep.
Yeah, sorry. It's really been interesting. Speaking of, by the way, we can touch on that for the moment. What happened to Rhinos?
I don't know. I don't know. I
We
tried.
banned violent outbursts,
I
and
know.
now you can't find a rhino
I
anywhere
tried.
in the room.
There was I actually didn't take a look to see if anybody was playing it this weekend, but I did play a little bit when MH3 first came out because
Uh-huh.
Flage was a card that I wanted to try. Where you have a lot of cards that naturally go to the graveyard. You have like Lorien Revealed, Fetch Lands, Fire Ice, Subtlety. So you can actually fill up your graveyard pretty fast for Flage. But the issue that I've been coming across is the mana is really tough, where you kind of have to play Breeding Pool so that Lorien Revealed can go find a green source. But if
Yeah.
you're playing Breeding Pool alongside Forest and Island, then you have 3 lands that don't cast Flage. So the mana base is something that it's really tough to figure out. But I think that there's potential. Oh, wait, well, I see a land being untapped. Are we passing?
What's the
No, I'm confused.
Oh no. No, we're still going.
Oh, wait, was the land untapped the whole time? I'm
I
like, I forgot.
Yeah, we I think we're still going here. So we appear to
Oh,
though to
the
be at
Sagey
the
happened. Okay.
deterministic part of this, right? Because at this point it appears to be triggers that are just all putting lands into play for BBD. So this we're just working our way through it here.
Okay, I'm trying to figure out. Yeah. But
Yeah.
anyways, back to going back to the Rhino talk. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know. Flage did feel very, very powerful when I tried it. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's the combination of like the Boros energy deck is it gets to this kind of the Boros energy deck has so much life gain in it between like the Guide of Souls, the Ocelot Prides, and pumping the Ocelot Prides and things like that, that it's kind of hard to race them. And they can also fly over you with Guide of Souls, so that matchup felt a
Yeah.
little tough. Nadu is basically impossible. Like you could never beat Nadu with Rhinos, so that's could be a reason as well. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just a combination of mana being bad with Flage and then the metagame maybe not being in a great spot for it.
Yeah, it's just wild. We came a very long way from banning violent outbursts to the deck. I just checked. Nobody was playing it
Oh,
today.
no brave souls, huh?
That is sadly true.
Well, we can hope. Maybe there's somebody playing it at the team tournament tomorrow. Although it's less likely in teams because you would have two other people who would bring you to your senses to not play the Rhino deck, because you have to convince two people, not just yourself.
Well, that's also what I mean. Look, we talked earlier about Modern just kind of feeling like it's in a little bit of a holding pattern because of what we're watching right now.
Yep.
So, like the idea, who knows? Maybe Rhinos will loop back around at some point. I'm not sure. All right, we if you've ever wondered how this deck won, and I hope you never have, now you know. I believe we are very close to a complete loop of Odawara. If I remember right, Devin, to half an hour ago before we, got off of this particular match, I think Blake had a fatal push in him.
Yeah. But
So
there's a Teferi, right?
Blake has no game actions to take,
Yeah.
but did have the fatal push. So maybe at one point there was, a thought to that being
Maybe,
what was going to go on here. But just to be clear, there is a Teferi in play. Blake cannot do anything.
Oh, now
Yeah, this
BBD's
is.
stepping away.
Oh, BBD's gonna go consult. Okay, or maybe just go to the bathroom. Maybe he said, "All right, we're in this. Let's go to the
30 minutes.
restroom."
30 minutes into the loop. Actually, you know what? I got to go to the bathroom. I'll be right back. Oh boy.
Oh man, I
This is something. This is fun.
we've talked a lot about Magic history. Now we're being a part of Magic history, Devin. That's what we're
Yes.
getting to do right now. So you know what?
Yeah, I mean,
That's what we're here for. You and me getting to hang out with all of these players, including Brian Braun-Duin, who has the world champion, who has returned to the table after a quick break, and we will see where things go from here.
we
Yeah, there's a
talked
lot of
earlier
dice
about
over there. Yeah.
we talked earlier about the like the Hogak metas and the Eldrazi metas. We sort of were part of those in different ways, and now we're kind of this is sort of maybe the first time that I've been able to commentate on a Nadu match because this is really it. This is the first weekend that I've been doing commentary since the deck has been around, and yeah, this is it's definitely something to be part of for sure.
And you know what? Hey, I'm glad that I could spend it with you, Devin, and all of
Likewise.
you here on our NRG stream hanging out. We appreciate you hanging out with us. Look, we know what we're watching, we know what's going on here, but I still see that there are a ton of you hanging out with us because you, like us, enjoy Magic. And frankly, this is one of those things you just have to see how it ends at this point. If we feel like we
It's
know
like a
how it's
car
going to
wreck,
end,
you can't
right?
look away.
I have to know. We're part of a moment here, and that's something. And after this, we'll be part of more moments because this is the quarterfinals of our modern event here in Madison. Our other players have wrapped up their quarterfinal matches. We have two Nadu players as well as a Naya Affinity player into the top four thus far. They will be joined by one of these players, and then we will work our way through the finals to crown a champion for day one here of our event. Day
I want
two is
to.
tomorrow with team trios on tap.
I wanted to take a look at Blake's deck list because I was thinking that maybe he's like, oh well, if BBD has to pass, then I can draw Toxic Deluge. But there are actually 0 copies of Toxic Deluge in the main deck, so can't even draw towards that. There's 2 in the sideboard, but to the last time I checked, I don't think you can draw cards from the sideboard.
No, it's where we'll be looking. Sorry, Chad. I appreciate you hanging in there with us, Chad. You're also making me laugh. So thank you for hanging out with us as we work our way through this one. When we do get to the sideboard, we've watched Murktide handle Nadu earlier in this tournament with access. So we kind of talked it through earlier. The deluges obviously would be huge.
Mhm.
Is there any thought to the surgicals, right? Based on what we've just watched, is that where we want? Do we think that it's time to pull the triggers somebody today on just bringing in the surgicals and just going for it?
I mean, maybe it's a situation where you just have to hope that oh, there's no Thoughtseize. I don't know why I thought there was Thoughtseize in this deck. So you would have to specifically have Fatal Push or Counter Spell or Drown
Yeah.
or Charm. But yeah, I don't know. It's tough. It's like you have to line up a Fatal Push or a Counter Spell with it. I don't. That's
There
really
are the
really
drown in the
tough.
locks, though, for
Yeah,
what
there
it's
are
worth.
drowns.
So, there are ways, but it's interesting. He does feel like he's going to have plenty of options, though, once we do get to those sideboarded games, because the drown in the locks in the main deck, along with the full suite of counter spells, in addition to the spell snares, is a lot to sit behind uh, in this game, right? So it was kind of in this one we saw Blake have the Bowmasters and that line, but just a lot of counter magic to keep the relevant threats off the board is at least a possibility in the next game. That's where we talk about Halfling and so on out of the Nadu.
Yeah, this is yeah, so I think I don't know. The way that this game is played up, maybe Blake wants to go towards those surgicals. It is I'm trying to think if there's like a window where you can surgical the endurance to prevent the loop, but then I don't know how much that matters because even if BBD just goes through his entire deck once without endurances, like just the board presence of having a bunch of 1/1s, maybe build counters, all that kind of stuff, that's probably going to be good enough anyways.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's yeah, it's you kind of have to specifically line up the surgical with Nadu, and there's not not really much else that it's good with.
Okay, so we're back to BBD, putting the cards in a loop.
We're still going. I mean, at this point, we could have just run some Twitch ads. I don't know if Norm could hear me right now, but that might be a good idea.
I am interested, just sort of from a academic standpoint, what is going to occur from here, or why we're even still making BBD track the dice. Like, can we? The judges, someone has to be able to get involved here. We have to be able to figure something out.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that BBD would have explained the loop, right? And maybe it's
That
just the
the
phrasing that he's using. Maybe he's not explaining it properly. I don't know.
I don't know.
'Cause
What we do know is the judges and the rest of the top 8 are at the table involved, watching along with all of us and you hanging out with us. And you know what? I see that we've got a lot of you who are interested to see how this shakes out. You're witnessing Magic history unfolding.
What'd be a really good thing to do right now is remind every single person in the chat to hit that follow button.
That's
NRG and,
right.
and Nerd Rage Gaming putting on a fantastic show, and I love doing these shows, and every single person who follows really does help support the stream. So hit that follow button.
Yeah, that's a great point. We appreciate all of your support, because speaking as someone who has been a part of Magic, the community, for a long time, and Magic coverage for a long time as well, there's really no replacement for these events. And I don't
Mhm.
mean just hanging out, us all watching BBD string together this combo together here, hanging out on Twitch. I just mean the general vibe that you get from Magic events, community, um, the streaming of the events along with it, like providing coverage. All of that is a service to the community that allows us to hang out and experience moments of Magic history like this, even if in the moment there's something. But uh, the point is, we appreciate all of you. Hit that follow button. There is an Otawara happening. Otawara has bounced endurance.
Okay, what are we doing with that? Otawara bounce endurance? I'm
Along with a
confused.
waterlogged grove in the graveyard. Okay.
It's funny
Well, I think we're
because
getting there.
Honestly, Corbin, throughout all of this, BBD, I mean, he knows the deck list, right? The players have access to deck list. So knowing that there isn't a copy of Toxic Deluge, he could have just passed the turn, and he knows that this is good enough. There's no Deluge in the main deck, so.
I've thought that through once or twice. Um, I I don't know. I haven't seen anyone play Battle of Wills in a minute, but this is a Battle
Yeah,
of Wills
that's
that
fair.
we are
It is.
watching.
No, it is for sure. I mean, if there's anybody in the tournament to play Battle of Wills that I would want to I would bet on, it would be BBD for sure.
Yeah, I mean, because that's what this is at this point. Maybe Blake is making a point about the deck. I don't know, but I see BBD counting. It looks like we might be explaining and presenting a loop. Uh, the right way, not sure, but a smile has broken out.
A rare BBD smile.
I think I saw a matching one from Blake. We've got grins, folks.
Okay. That means something the players, either something changed about the game state or something changed about the players' understanding of what's going on here. Both of those are good things.
He picked up the
Hey, there we
cards.
go. Blake has picked up the cards. I want to see the thing that I want to know, Corbin, is how many tokens were made. That's the real question.
There were a few. I think they might have started hitting up random people in the hall, asking them if they had any extra dice. We've run out of tokens. Please, all I have
We
all
did
of
it.
these Nadus, and all I need is one token. That's where we were at there. But BBD takes. You ready for that? Game one of our match in the quarterfinals
Game one.
here in Madison of the top 8 of our modern event. These players are playing for a lot on the line here, and we are marching towards the semifinals next. Our other 3 matches are in. All that remains is this Nadu from BBD against his opponent, Blake, on we will see which of them are able to take it down. But I think we may be in for a small break next for everyone to catch their breath before we go into the next game. Welcome back, everybody. We have returned to the top 8 here in Madison. It is the modern showdown today. We have crowned 3 members of our top 4 thus far. We are coming back. You are witnessing Braun-Duin on Bant Nadu on your left, Blake Thompson on Dimir Murktide on the right. Down a game. Players playing for a spot in the top 4. I'm Corbin Hostler, joined by Devin Doomwake O'Donnell. Welcome in to the last match of the quarterfinals.
Yeah, to be honest with you, Corbin, we all needed a little bit of a reset after that game. We don't usually take breaks in between games, but after that game one, we needed to rest our brains a little bit. We'll see how this game goes though. So this is post board, remember. We did kind of talk briefly during the game. We whether or not Blake was going to board in those surgicals. Almost certainly the toxic delusions are going to come in. We didn't really get to briefly touch on BBD sideboard, so I will kind of read it off for you real quick. It's 2 Spell Pierce,
Yeah.
2 Run-a-Fel, a Scheming Fence, a Draenith Magistrate, one ring, one ring, 1 Soulless Jailer, 1 Endurance, a Veil of Summer, a Force of Vigor, a Sun Cleanser, a Vexing Bauble, a Barenton Forge Tenor, and a Dismember. Maybe wants to go like towards the Spell Pierces to fight over counter magic. Run-a-Fel could be interesting against Murktide Regent. The One Ring, if the game goes long, something like that. And then probably the Endurance too, to like help stymie the Murktide Regents. But this game is that's the other thing I kind of didn't consider. Now, there's not a lot of targets, but what do you think about Blake boarding in what's that card called? The Stone Rain? Break the Ice. Now, Break the Ice kills Urza Saga, which is a premium target, but that is the only target, so maybe it's a little too narrow.
I assume he has enough good cards. It's not a situation where he needs to board it in, but man, would it have been good right here or what?
Yeah, imagine.
Is
Now,
that surgical? What is that? Because that's a big
That
scorecard, right?
that is surgical extraction. He
That's
did
right.
bring him in.
Okay.
Now, graveyard right. Oh, there's a Shuko in the graveyard. That could be a target.
It's a breaking news
Um,
card.
Now, even if Shuko does get surgical, BBD still has access to the Outrider Encore, so that could be something
Uh-huh.
he goes towards. So Blake might want to hold off on the surgical until he can fight over a Nadu on the stack, and then maybe kind of like set that angle up. But now something we don't normally talk about because it doesn't come up in a ton of games, but Urza Saga. Now,
Right.
the Nadu deck does not have a ton of artifacts, but you can say BBD's in a spot where he can go end step, make a token, untap, make a token, get a Shuko, and now you have 2/3/3s. So that can present a relatively fast clock here for Blake.
And here we go. Surgical. A little bit of a nod and a look there from BBD at that one. Think that one through. This is fascinating. The surveil land putting the Shuko target into the graveyard for the surgical. We talked
Yeah.
about like surgical has to line up with your opponents getting their cards into the graveyard. Well, they happen to surveil one and that can work too. Oh, there is the encore in hand though.
Yeah, and BBD just has the Outrider in hand. That's pretty funny. So BBD, the Shukos are going to be gone. So you can say end step, make a token, untap, float a mana, and then you have 2 lands. Well, 3 with the mana floating plus the token, and then you can play land for turn. That would get you to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I think you'd be one. Nah, you'd be a little bit more than one short. So it'll be interesting to see what BBD decides to go for. I would imagine this is probably just going to be a construct game, but
Yeah.
it is kind of funny that because the Shukos are gone, there's actually no additional targets here, unless BBD boarded in the Vexing Bauble. But yeah, and that's actually going to be a big difference because having 2/3/3s versus 2/2/2s, that makes a world of difference here when it comes to BBD clocking Blake. But the Shukos are going to be off of the table.
Wow.
And Blake just
Blake
slamming a Murktide.
Yeah, well, this is looking very different than the first game. Braun-Duin playing the small creature deck, doing nothing but with small creatures, and instead just making a card struct. Meanwhile, Blake with a very fast Murktide, putting the pressure on here.
Yeah, and those
Okay,
construct
well,
tokens are decent against the blue black decks.
yeah,
Where if you have a little bit more time, right, you can
right.
imagine a situation where Blake maybe has an Orcish Bowmasters or doesn't have a large threat, but these construct tokens are certainly not going to be racing a 5/5 Murktide.
That's right. That's exactly right. In fact, BBD drew a second Urza Saga there. So in a different world, making another construct here and then playing the other saga, and you're planning just making 3 or 4 constructs over the course of the game to win would be viable if you weren't just getting absolutely beat down in the air by a very, very fast deployed Murktide. So in this case, the saga going away, and if you're not going to get in Shuko to combo, it's certainly going to be worse here. Actually, losing the mana from it matters.
Yeah, so BBD is going to float a mana. Oh, I missed the Hex Parasite. I missed that. Okay, I was looking. I was only looking under artifacts to try and find targets, but
Mhm.
that was hiding out in the creatures. So there is a target here for the Urza Saga,
Well, this is
and
this is cool.
the Hex Parasite is kind of interesting with the second copy of Saga, where given enough time, you can actually start removing counters from the Saga so that it never actually dies.
Yeah.
Now, granted, under a 5/5 Murktide probably doesn't have that kind of time in a game like this, but it is something that is it is an option available to BBD.
Parasite's an interesting card too, just like a neat card because it was not playable in modern for many, many, many years, and it wasn't
Mhm.
even like a new combo that made it playable. Just kind of things evolved in such a way that I guess you could say it's a combo with Urza Saga, but it just actually works against a surprisingly large swath of the field.
Oh, that's something I didn't even realize that chat brings up. The Hex Parasite can actually remove counters from the Murktide.
Correct.
So
Yes.
that
Yeah,
can
that's
actually make it a much smaller clock.
right. It's going to cost some amount of life or whatever on the first, but it does slow it down. And now you have Sylvan Safekeeper protect, and you have this other Urza Saga, and the parasite grows your construct. I mean, I'm not saying BBD wants to play a fair game of Magic here, but it's not completely off the table.
Yeah, and looks
Like,
like the leftovers here for Blake are Counterspell, Subtlety, and a couple lands with that 3/3 Murktide. And now, we talked about the Murktide being able to race the construct tokens, but 3/3 Murktide versus 2/2
mhm,
construct token. Next turn, it's going to make another one, the turn after another, and then they're going to be 4/4s. Like,
yeah,
this is actually a race that BBD can now win.
that's another Saga drawn. We're one Gavany Township away from him really going off here.
What a throwback on that one. I love that card.
Oh, Sylvan Safekeeper would have fit right in.
Yeah,
Well, this
BBD
is
is just
not
going
at
to.
all like the first game we watched. I'll say that, but
No.
it does have BBD's creatures sideways again, and they're coming in for damage here on Blake.
Yeah, and we know that Blake has a subtlety, so I guess you could maybe go subtlety in front of the Hex Parasite. But then if that were to happen, BBD could then use the parasite to remove counters from the saga to then trade for the subtlety. It looks like I think what Blake is maybe interested in is just take the damage and then end step and just we're just gonna get into an old fashioned damage race. End step, play the subtlety,
Yeah,
hit BBD down to 9. Is Blake facing lethal on the next turn? So 1, 2, 3. That would be 4, 8, 9, 10. I think it would not quite be lethal.
and so next turn BBD untaps. He's able to instep. If this is the way we're going, you can make another construct. You can untap. You could actually then make another construct. I think just one more, even with losing it. So you end up with three of them. It's a big swing. I mean, it kind of puts it down then to what Blake might have to interact. And as we can see, Blake he's got a shot in this race. He's got 4 cards in hand, one of which is a fatal push. That's a great answer to a construct.
Yeah, that fatal push is a huge pickup because that's going to be able to answer. Oh, actually, it's not
It's going to
because of the
run into
safekeeper. I
yeah,
forgot
it's going
about
to
the
run into
safekeeper, right?
Safekeeper at least.
Yep.
But oh, okay, the Veil of Summer, even worse.
And we are okay. So we could have fought over that with counterspell, but I think Blake is preserving the mana to hold up subtlety, which makes sense. And look at this, not even an attack from Blake. This is now a race he has recognized that he can no longer win. So yeah, these Urza sagas, like I said, we don't really see a lot of this from Nadu, but yeah, these Urza sagas are going to put a hurting on Blake here. Like I said, you can untap, make an additional one that's going to be 4/4s, and just kind of go from there. Pasage was the pickup here for BBD, I believe.
Well, BBD's just been able to play the fair game. We don't see it very often, the plan B, but the the Hex Parasite taking counters away from a Murktide Regent to be relevant is not an interaction you see often in Modern. It's certainly not before a couple weeks ago, anyway. But there you go. But Urza Saga, ever since it's come out, has done exactly this: make constructs, take over games that otherwise look stalled. Very powerful stuff here from BBD trying to work this one through. And Sylvan Safekeeper, you can use that, throw away your lands. It's a big cost to protect yourself. But with Veil of Summer, you're cycling off of it. You're countering spells that way. You're really just getting a ton of value off of every single interaction you've played. And all of a sudden, the fair game for Brian Braun-Duin has kind of outdone the fair game from the Dimir Murktide player.
Yeah, and the fair game for BBD is infinite Urza sagas because with that Hex Parasite, he's going to be able to keep both of these Urza sagas around effectively, like just indefinitely. And that means that he's just going to be able to make a whole bunch of construct tokens. And it's going to be very, very tough for Blake to be able to answer that. I mean, I guess you could play the subtlety and double block one, but you can't really just trade one of them because there's 3 artifacts and BBD has threatening the ability to make a 4th as he is
Yeah.
going to do in combat. That's going to mean Blake is taking 8 all the way down to 3, and now even if there is a top deck Toxic Deluge, does not have enough life to work with.
Yep. Great point. Yeah, and I'm not sure that racing would have worked out any better. I am pretty sure that that scalding turn off the top is not going to be the answer. That sets things straight here. So things looking pretty good for Brian Braun-Duin. He won one game with the most convoluted combo turn you will ever see in Magic, and he won one game by turning some small creatures sideways. Just like Richard Garfield designed.
Yeah, game one took maybe 45-ish minutes. Game two took maybe 4.5. So there you go. That is going to be BBD advancing 2-0 over Blake Thompson.
There you go. What a match. Maybe for not all the reasons we wanted, but what a match that was. BBD advanced into the semifinals, where he will join the other winners of our quarterfinals as we make our way on towards the end of the day here in Madison. We had sealed this morning. We had modern happening. We've got team trios on tap tomorrow. A lot of great stuff happening this week. I believe that we are going to take a short break here, and then we will be back for those semifinals. We will bring you the one non-Nadu player I'm sure that we have to watch. So looking forward to it. We will see you on the other side for our semifinals.